There was a pretty comprehensive memo in the file explaining what all the issues are. One of the things that was really not emphasized, but I think is worth consideration for the public, is that the smart meter program is going to cause the elimination of thousands of high-paying union jobs at the same time as the state of California is experiencing unprecedented unemployment. So there's a whole social consequence to this deployment of smart meters. Right now, the process is really before the California Public Utilities Commission. One of the options before us is to intervene in that action. City and County of San Francisco filed a petition to suspend deployment with the California Public Utilities Commission. I talked to Bill Sanders, who's handling that case for the City and County of San Francisco, and he has invited us to intervene in the case. And what intervention would involve is filing a pretty simple petition. It's filed electronically, there's no filing fees, and we have a model form of a motion for intervention. So it's a very low-cost, high-impact thing that the town can do to get the attention of the California Public Utilities Commission, which is probably the ultimate authority on the rollout of this program in Northern California. Our council only has jurisdiction, obviously, in Fairfax. California Public Utilities Commission has made previous rulings authorizing this program to be rolled out, and actually most recently provided a tariff of $563 million to increase the ratepayer funds that go into this. Lest you think it's only the town of Fairfax or the City and County of San Francisco that has an interest or a critical interest in the program, it's interesting to note that the state of Maryland's Public Utilities Commission, or the equivalent of their state of Maryland's Public Utilities Commission, the Public Service Commission of Maryland, recently, and I mean within the last 2 weeks, denied smart meter deployment in the state of Maryland. And there's a very interesting quote I'm going to read you, and this is after a litigated process in the state of Maryland. The proposal asks PG&E's ratepayers to take significant financial and technological risks and adapt to categorical changes in rate design, all in exchange for savings that are largely indirect, highly contingent, and a long way off. We are not persuaded this bargain is cost-effective or serves the public interest. And they shot it down. Now, unfortunately, we're not in that position. The Public Utilities Commission in the state of California has approved it, in spite of well-documented concerns about the accuracy of the meters. There's concerns that are very well briefed by the state of Maryland as far as privacy and security. That's really, as far as my own interest in this is concerned, is a major interest. These meters are taking electrical readings, or are reading the amount of power used in any ratepayer structure every 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how they're programmed. We really don't know the exact details of that. But when you measure electrical usage in that small of an increment with that fine a sieve, that translates into understanding activities that are going on in the house, to the extent that your electrical power usage can tell when you wake up, when you put your coffee on, when you take a bath. They can also disclose if you're home or occupying the premises. That data, at this point in the state of California, is not protected significantly. A better way to put it is there are significant concerns as to whether your data, and it's a huge amount of data that is being absorbed through the system, is protected. And what could it be protected from? It could be protected from being shared with other agencies. It could be protected from being used by other commercial interests. And obviously it could be it should be protected from law enforcement. There's a Supreme Court case that says that that type of data gathering is subject to a search warrant issued by a court. So the point is not to raise the specter of Big Brother, but more to look at it from the point of view of your expectation of privacy on an everyday level. That needs to be protected, and right now it's not. Another issue that's well briefed by the state of Maryland was that these meters are subject to what they call cybersecurity concerns, and the fact that the National Institute of Standards and Technology has not yet created those standards. So in other words, the technology is being deployed before we have standards that would really determine encryption codes and protection from hacking and other types of security lapses that type of a data collection network entail. Another issue that was briefed in California is that you need a program to actually use the data. That doesn't exist now. So when PG&E went and got its rate increase approved, it's done so based on certain calculations of savings of energy and savings of employee costs. Well, that all depends on what you do with the data. Okay, right now we don't have, for example, a standard way for appliances to report to meters. Each appliance manufacturer uses its own code, so there's no national standards. This whole program is really based upon the proposition that consumers, given the knowledge of how much power are actually using, will change their behavior. And what's missing from the current proposal before the California CPUC is that the smart meter is not going to give that information to consumers. In order for consumers or ratepayers to really be monitoring their use of energy, they need what's called the Household Area Network, an HAN. That will involve yet another broadband device. And so far, that's not even included in the tariff that's before the California Utilities Commission, that's been approved by the California Utilities Commission. Another thing to contemplate is that not all ratepayers, not all consumers can change their behavior to avoid peak rate tariffs. Okay, you've got a whole group of consumers, elderly consumers, infirm consumers, that can't pick and choose when they're using electrical power because they may not be able to pick and choose. They may be homebound. They may use medical devices that require electric power 24/7. They're not going to be able to change their behavior. They're not going to get any benefit from this. So the smart meter program itself is not going to save any electrical power. What it's going to do, if they're able to deploy it successfully, it's going to give information at some point that may be managed. Right now, we don't have the technology to do it. At present, there is still a study that the California Public Utilities Commission has paid for to determine whether these meters are even accurate. That study is not complete at this point. So the meters that are being deployed in the town of Fairfax have not been determined to even be accurate, even according to the California Public Utilities Commission, which has paid several $1 million for this study to be done. And last but not least, you've got a whole element of concern in the community about EMF. Now, PG&E comes to the table and says, all these devices have been approved by FCC. Well, everybody that's been following the EMF issue knows that FCC is more concerned with reception and range and not human health effects. The only human health effects that FCC is really looking at is thermal injury, in other words, heat-based injury. And the data that we're getting and the studies have shown that there's a much more subtle form of human health effect, whether it's chromosomal damage, cellular mutation. The jury is still out on those studies. And if we're going to follow the precautionary principle, we need to find out whether there are human health effects before we deploy the technology. So there's a whole range of issues that you can pick from as far as being critical of the smart meter program. I think we can create a smart grid without smart meters. In other words, if the intent of the program is to manage the grid so that we can ration power where we need it, when we need it, there's other ways of doing it. We can put devices higher up on the grid. So in other words, instead of putting a device that would smart meters in every individual ratepayer's home, we would put the device higher on the grid so that each individual block that the grid serves could be managed by the network provider, PG&E. So in other words, you could manage the grid sort of nimbly without raising all the issues that are involved with smart meters. In other words, we can make a flexible grid without using smart meters. There's many other ways to do it. There's a lot of technical approaches that don't involve smart meters that will allow us to create this nimble grid, the smart grid, and that's the intent of the program. Before the council tonight is the question, what can we do, or what should we do? We know that these devices are being deployed in Fairfax. We've documented that there's an antenna, at least, that's been installed at Frustic and Bolinas, and I get reports by email that there may be a meter that's been installed at a private residence. So far, I guess the information from PG&E is a little bit uncertain, but we know that the plan is to deploy smart meters in Marin from July 1st until sometime next year. Fairfax has had a long-standing ordinance, section 19.04 of the Fairfax Town Code. It's called the Wireless Telecommunications Code, which requires that before a wireless provider installs a system in the town of Fairfax, they need to get a use permit through the Planning Commission. That's whether you are PG&E, whether you're a cell phone provider, or another type of installer. That hasn't been done, and we send a cease and desist letter to PG&E advising them that that's required. And the code is very specific that it covers this type of installation. The code actually recites that it applies to any FCC or PUC approved project. So the code actually contemplates working with the PUC, and not in opposition to the PUC, but working jointly with PUC approved projects. So at a minimum, I think the council has the option and should pursue the option. Staff has already taken the initiative of getting PG&E to comply with our existing code. The other two options are filing a motion to intervene with the California Public Utilities Commission, and the motion to intervene is in support of the San Francisco petition to suspend deployment. That is a very low-cost, high-impact thing that we can do. The third thing that we can do is pass an ordinance, which basically codifies a moratorium. How do we do that? The law behind the ordinance is described in our memorandum. The town of Fairfax has had a long-standing franchise agreement with Pacific Gas and Electric, under which we give them right-of-way permission to install wires, transponders, utility boxes, and meters. And under that franchise actually was adopted by the town about 50 years ago. And thanks to Frank Egger, we actually dredged it up from the PUC. In researching that franchise agreement, we found that the franchise was given under the California Franchise Act of 1937. And the California Franchise Act of 1937 contains some very interesting language in it, which says that the legislative body may, in such a franchise, impose such other and additional terms and conditions not in conflict with this chapter, whether governmental or contractual in nature, as in the judgment of the legislative body, are to the public interest. And I believe suspending deployment of this technology is in the public interest. I think we can make that finding based on the facts set forth in the memorandum, and it's in the public domain. So those are what I think are our three options. I think we can do all three in a sort of serial fashion. And I think we're going to need to talk to PG&E about whether they're going to be willing to go through the public hearing process that we've required for all wireless telecommunications.
Thanks, Larry. Very excellent work. And for myself, I think that we should employ all three. I think that we should craft as strong an ordinance as we can craft to deter the installation of these in our community, showing other communities how they can do the same. The permitting process under our town code needs to be fiercely enforced. And if we've sent a cease and desist, if they don't remove it, I believe that we need to have a nuisance abatement of it. The antenna at Rustic and Molinas I'm referring to. And I just think that we need to move on all three fronts and make it very clear to Pacific Gas and Electric that their little social experiment is not welcome in this community. I mean, we are not going to be their guinea pigs. And they need to get that loud and clear. This is no different than the cell phone towers that we've been fighting for years. Ever since I've been on this council, that comes back around and we deflect it every time. And we've been resolute about that, and we need to be as resolute about this. It's another instance of standing up to another bully, and we need to do it. We just need to do it. We need to protect. We're here to protect our citizens, and that is our primary responsibility.
Thank you.
And we need
Well, these are legal remedies, and that's pretty much what we have to work with. I also support doing all three things. I guess I myself, on a personal level, believe in doing the thing that makes sense. Basically, I have a time of use meter on my house, so I can run solar panels and generate power when the power grid needs it, sell it to it. And in fact, it's not rocket science to figure out when you're using electricity and turning it off in the afternoon in the summertime. Because that's when it's expensive. I mean, it doesn't take a smart meter to figure that out. I'm floored by the fact that they can, put a $2.2 billion program to buy all these meters, not including all the software to figure out what to do with all the data, open up all these cans of worms and security problems and health problems, all kinds of stuff, and not even really address the problem. You have to figure out, well, why are they doing it? Well, follow the money. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent on these, there's a lot of jobs being eliminated, and in fact, PG&E is being paid with stimulus money to do this. So all the money, it's not in our interest. I think it's in our interest to save money, save energy, and that's really what the objective should be. And it's unfortunate we have to jump through the legal hoops to keep them doing the right thing, but I think we need to do that.
Yeah, the serial fashion I'm interested in. The motion to intervene, absolutely. The permit enforcement, absolutely. Talk to me about how you see moving the ordinance for the moratorium. How do you contemplate bringing that forward? And I bring it, there's a tension. The tension always is resolved on behalf of public safety. And so I'm inclined to go in the direction. But we live in times that earlier this evening we labored on in many other items about the fact that we are facing dire circumstances on the budget. And if there's ever been a company which is going to roll out its legal counsel, it's PG&E. I've had the opportunity to be involved in litigation against them. They are formidable foes. And so I'm concerned that if we move on an ordinance, I would want it to be locked down because we are at the threshold now of going to trial in a much smaller matter. This cost us $100,000 and change. And now to bring on more litigation at a time that our budget is so thin greatly concerns me. So how do you envision this serial rolling out of an offensive plan to get PG&E to sort of come to the table or recognize that this community doesn't want these meters at this time?
I think the way we would do it is the way we did polystyrene and plastic bags. We move forward with the ordinance. We try to get it as concise and enforceable as we can through our council. And we pass the ordinance, and we're going to have to wait to see whether PG&E challenges it. If it challenges it, at that point we have several options. We can withdraw the ordinance or not. But my feeling is if PG&E takes that step, our next step is to go to the ballot and pass a ballot initiative by the people of Fairfax, which we're entitled to do under the state constitution, and create that type of process that may withstand a challenge by them. So in other words, if we go that way, the ballot initiative way, we may be able to withstand that challenge on constitutional grounds, if they decide to make it. But I mean, that would seem to me to be the way we approach it. I don't think we are going to incur extraordinary fees to introduce the ordinance and to move forward with the ordinance.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. The approach of the plastic bag that two of you brought forward, I thought was a model of civic engagement, and it captured, I think, the idealism and also the environmental concerns of the community. But it also was flexible enough to recognize that when the knuckleheads from the plastic bag industry came after us, that there was an alternative approach to getting what the community wanted while denying them the opportunity to bludgeon us on the legal front, thereby allowing us to devote our financial resources in much more toward passing the ordinance, passing the budget thing, the ballot initiative, rather than having to fight in court. So if that's the approach that you envision here, I'm in total support of it.
Good. I mean, the idea in Fairfax is to set a little backfire, which firefighters do when there's a big fire, a big wildfire. They'll set a little backfire, and that can create enough space and enough clearance to stop the big fire. And that's all we can do, and that's what we need to do. And I think that's what we ought to do.
All right. I would entertain a motion to direct staff to file the intervention with the PUC, to begin or continue immediate enforcement of our town code as it pertains to the permitting of putting antennas up in our community, and to begin drafting a ordinance that would call for a moratorium on installation of smart meters in Fairfax.
Can I offer a friendly amendment based on Bruce's comments? And, you know, he actually echoed something that you said earlier, I think it was the very first time, which was this idea that they have the opportunity to bring it in through our cable lines. I think you mentioned that rather than the pulsing approach. And I'd be interested whether, instead of just simply saying no, is there a way to say no plus, there's a better way here. And it removes I don't say removes, it addresses to some degree the health impact side that is particularly most concerning to me, I think to Judy as well. So I don't know if that's a possibility, but in crafting our response, it's always better to give an option for something different rather than merely saying no.
That's an excellent suggestion for inclusion in the recitals of the ordinance. Yes.
I also agree. I think it would be important, if it was just to go to a hardwired situation on the individual meters, I think it still leaves unaddressed the very legitimate privacy and security concerns that Larry has brought up. And so,
Sure.
Right.
I think we should provide some positive options that are really crafted towards dealing with all the aspects of the problem.
And I don't want to test the council's patience, but before I go yes on this, I also want to reiterate that a large part of my yes vote on the motion will be because of, I very much appreciated the logical and sequential or serial, the way Larry put it, of these three items in a row. And that the way that the prior council dealt with the plastic bag ordinance, I want to go on record and say that I thought that the approach, the flexible approach that the council took to addressing that problem when we faced the cost and expense of litigation from those knuckleheads, that when these knuckleheads come after us, that the council will have the opportunity to decide, as Larry put it, whether to approach it through the ballot as opposed to fighting it out in the courtroom.
I would make note that if we are challenged on a CEQA issue, then we would have remedy at the ballot. So if they posed another challenge, I'm not sure that the ballot would be as bulletproof. Thank you. But certainly that gives us cover if they come after us on CEQA. So that was why we were able to prevail via the ballot with polystyrene and plastic bags, was because we were challenged on the California Environmental Quality Act. So I think that we need to stand up and we need to say to PG&E, not here. And we will have to be prudent in managing how we dance with them, and their lawyers. I have some experience doing that over the last year and a half as this town's representative on the Marin Energy Authority. And you have to be deft, but you can dance that dance with their lawyers and win. And we did it at Marin Clean Energy, and I think we can do it here. We just have to keep our eye on the ball, pay attention to their every move, and understand that we are in a chess match with a chess master. And
So I would move the motion that you suggested. I just want to note that in the draft ordinance that's before the council, in paragraph 3, PG&E is now installing smart meters. We should insert the word wireless smart meters so that it's specified what we're talking about. If you go down to paragraph 4, where it says increased electromagnetic frequency radiation EMF emitted by, instead of these meters, it should be wireless meters.
Okay.
So that it's very clear what we're talking about, because we can create a smart grid without smart meters. And the idea of creating a flexible grid that rations power where it's needed and allows people to, behave or use electricity in accordance with the needs of, the grid, not during peak times, is, it's a good goal. It hasn't been shown that these devices will actually accomplish that. But I think we can make our ordinance pretty clear what we're trying to address by adding those words.
I also think that somehow it would be wise for us to weave into this ordinance the acknowledgement that PG&E has in fact removed these meters from people's homes because they made them sick. And PG&E has in fact admitted as much. And so that needs to somehow be noted in this ordinance, because I think that would aid in the defense of the ordinance.
That can be added. That can be added in paragraph 6.
You better make sure that's factual.
In terms of this ordinance, we're sending it to staff to be brushed up.
It'll come back for introduction in August.
Yeah, first reading in August. The couple other things, just because I'm not sure everyone's aware, PG&E wrote an email to me today stating that they did inform any customer that received a smart meter through a letter that went through the U.S. Postal Service. So you should have been, according to PG&E, informed of any installation of a smart meter in a residential unit. And I specifically asked that question, and that was the response that I got.
You never got it.
I never got
All I'm saying is that's what PG&E has told me. The other thing that I wanted to be sure the council was aware is that PG&E did pick up the application for the use permit, and they are filling it out. Theoretically, they're filling it out, and I will follow up if we don't receive it in the next few days for that device that's at Bolinas and Fresno.
And there will be a hearing in front of the planning commission.
Yes. And if they don't react in a timely manner, then we can always go to the administrative enforcement code.
Great.
Yeah.
And then have to pay 3 times the application.
And pay 3 times the application fee. There is one other thing you might want to add in there, because I do know this is a fact. There were quite a few smart meters, and I don't know the exact number, but it's a very large number that were removed because they were faulty and they did not read the information correctly, and customers were overcharged based on faulty meters. That was in PG&E's own press release. They removed, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of meters, and they were defective, and they have since replaced those. But that is something that happened. So, and that is a fact.